Trump might be going to jail, and the media is saying Trump's chances are in major trouble. My name is Curtis, and I'm a political consultant, and you're watching the Campaign Chronicles, the common man's home for understanding this election. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at the big poll that came out this week that has the media spinning, saying Trump is doomed. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and take a look at that poll that came out. What you'll see in the headlines is you'll kind of just see them say 21% of independents say less likely to support Trump after his conviction. Some will say 32%. We're going to break all that down and for each line. So to start off with, more likely to support this, or I should say this poll has a couple different categories. More likely to support Trump and conviction is important to how they'll vote. And then more likely to support Trump and convictions not important to how I'll vote. And then it kind of breaks down like that. So at the bottom you'll see we've got less likely to support Trump and conviction is not important to how I'll vote. And then less likely to support Trump and conviction is important to how I will vote. So we'll break each of those lines down. But to start with, so some people are saying there's several different camps on this issue, but some people are saying that that actually this is going to help turn out the support for Trump in this election by motivating Republicans to get out and vote for Trump. So I was talking to someone the other day who's in this category. So they're a Republican who may have considered voting third party, may have considered voting Libertarian or for Kennedy. And after talking to them, they said, well, now I'm definitely supporting Trump. They called it a kangaroo court, stuff like that. And whether that's true or not, there is a faction of Republicans who are more likely to support Trump, and the conviction is important to how they're going to vote in this election. So it turns out that's about 13% of Republicans, which is not a big number, but it could be enough to make a little bit of a difference. Independents, there's a small percentage of independents that say more likely to support Trump and convictions important to how I will vote. This 5% of independents is most likely people who are already supporting Trump. Maybe there's a few independents in there who see this as an abuse of the justice system and they're being won over. I suspect these are independents in name only, and these 5% are just people who were already supporting Trump in the first place. Democrats, this may shock you, 0% of Democrats are more likely to support Trump after this conviction, and saying that this conviction is important to how they will vote. Total 6% are more likely to support Trump, and this conviction is very important to them. Moving on, more likely to support Trump and conviction is not important to how I will vote. So these are people who were voting for Trump no matter what, basically. So Democrats, 0%, not surprising. Republicans, 28%. So this is a big chunk of the Republican Party. If you add these two numbers up, it's going to be, it looks like 42% of Republicans say that they are more likely to support Trump after this conviction. And this is where that theory comes in that actually this is going to help turn out the base for Trump. And there could be something to that. 42%, that's a big number, but a lot of these people were probably supporting Trump anyway. So then independents, 7%, they're more likely to support Trump, and conviction is not important to how they'll vote. Again, this is probably people who were already going to support Trump. No impact either way. We've got 12% Democrats, or I should say this is no impact either way, and conviction is important to how they'll vote. Which these sound like people who just kind of don't know. They see they see conviction as kind of this landmark thing, this big thing. They do care about it, but not really sure how they feel about it, or they're already decided. So these could be people who are set on voting for Trump or Biden, and can they see conviction as important? However, doesn't matter; they're already set. And so this is 12% of Democrats, 9% of Republicans, and 10% of Independents. And these are also people who don't have fun taking polls, because this is kind of like my least favorite answer on this, because there's always a more or less, and we're gonna get into that in a little bit. Moving on to the next one, no impact on how I support for Trump, and conviction is not important to how I will vote. So these are the people who kind of don't care. We've got 29% of Democrats, we've got 41% of Republicans. And so for both of these camps, these 29% of Democrats are people probably already voting for Biden. These 41% of Republicans are people already voting for Trump. And then independents, interestingly, 47% don't really care about this conviction. And so I was thinking about this earlier, and I think this is a big sign that the American public is doing a trauma response thing right now, which is they have been through so much over the past 8 or 12 years that something like this kind of just doesn't faze them. And if this had happened in the mid 2000s, this would have been a huge deal. If we remember back to the 90s, when Bill Clinton was on trial for impeachment for basically lying, even like, you know, I was going to say a white lie. It wasn't a white lie. It was an actual lie. But, you know, for lying to Congress, you know, that was a big deal in the American public. And today it seems like Trump's conviction, not as big of a deal. We've got, again, 47% of independents saying they just don't really care. And so then this is where we get into the less likely to support Trump, and conviction is important to how I will vote. So this is going to be very big in this election. And so this is where we get to some of the numbers that you've seen pop up. So 21% of independents say they're less likely to support Trump, and conviction is important to how I will vote, right? And so these people could be swing voters. They could be people who are leaning Trump. They could be people who are leaning Joe Biden. The important thing to remember is that these aren't people saying, okay, now I'm voting for Biden. These are people saying, I'm just less likely now. And so this is tricky because, you know, I can think of some Republicans I know who are voting for Trump, but after a conviction like this, they would just be less likely. That doesn't mean that they're voting for Biden. It just means they want to vote for Trump less than they did before. And so that accounts for 7% of Republicans. And so you'll see people, I think Rachel Maddow the other day say, you know, just around, there was a similar poll like 2 weeks ago, and in it was a similar number. It was like, you know, 10% of Republicans say they're less likely to vote for Trump after this. And people were saying, well, 10% is actually a really big deal. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is. And so if you take away, you know, in Arizona in 2020, Trump lost by like 10,000 votes, which is, you know, that is less than if 10% of Democrats stayed home on election day in Arizona, Trump would have won Arizona, and by, you know, probably 50,000 votes or something like that. And so 10% would be a really big deal. Here's the only issue with that, again, is they're assuming that 10% of Republicans are no longer voting for Trump. Well, not exactly the case. It's more like, in this case, it looks like 8% of Republicans are less excited about voting for Trump. And that could be slightly less, or that could be significantly less, or they could be not voting for Trump at all. Democrats, 40% say they're less likely to vote for Trump, and conviction is important to how I will vote. These people were already voting for Joe Biden anyway. This is not a big deal to Trump. And then lastly, less likely to support Trump, and conviction is not important to how I will vote. And so we've actually got 11% of independents saying, don't really care. I guess I'm less likely to vote Trump. Same thing 1% of Republicans, and then 18% of Democrats saying less likely to support Trump, but conviction doesn't really matter anyway. They were probably voting for Joe Biden anyway. And so what do all these numbers mean? It's hard to tell a little bit. With I think the big number, I have a few thoughts on this. I think the big number to focus on is the 21% of independents and the 7% of Republicans that are less likely to support Trump, and conviction is important to how they will vote. And so the point that I'll make about independents, so the total number again is 32% of independents say that they are less likely to support Trump. This is, if I were in the Democratic camp, if I were political consulting for Joe Biden right now, I would be worried about this number. And so Democrats have continually made this mistake where they think that there's a silver bullet that can take down Trump. Unfortunately for Democrats, they're not willing to put in the legwork they need to make solid arguments against Trump, and they're focused on stuff like conviction, like impeachment, like Stormy Daniels, like whatever you want to, his tax documents, whatever it is. They're looking for the quick and easy way to take down Trump, and it just hasn't worked. And so, again, 32% total independents say they're less likely to vote for Trump. 21% say they're less likely, and they care about it. And so this number, you're going to hear a lot of hype about this number. This number is not very good for independents, for the Democrats. And so for this number to be 32%, the big problem with this is that this number is probably going to taper off, because what we're probably going to see is, and this isn't really like I like Trump and I don't want him to go to prison or whatever. He's probably not going to go to prison. And the reason for that is, or at least this election cycle, he's not going to go to prison. And the reason for that is he's probably going to appeal it, and it's probably going to be approved for the appeals process. And we may not see him actually go to trial for the appeal that he made until like next year or something like that. And so in any big case like this, there's usually an appeal that goes forward. And so what's likely going to happen is Trump's going to stick with his line saying, it was a horribly left-wing judge, totally biased against me. And he'll say that, and he'll say, see, the court agreed to appeal it, and so trust me, it'll be overturned. No problem, right? And so for the number to be 32% less likely, that's very worrying for the Democrats. They needed it to be probably like, if it was in the 60% range, that would be a big problem for Trump. But I guarantee you we're going to see that number taper off. If it was at 60% and it started tapering off and it tapered off to 40%, that would be big trouble for Trump. But that's just not what we're seeing. We're seeing 32%. And if that tapers off by 10%, then we've got 20% of independents who are less likely to support him. And it's probably not going to make a big difference at the end of the day. And we can see this actually. So if we go to, hold on one second, I have to open up my browser. So if we go to the very next page, what we're going to see, this question right here kind of tells us a lot about the questions up here. So the question right here is, now that Donald Trump has been convicted in the Manhattan falsifying business records case, what do you think the punishment should be, if anything? And so the big number here that I think tells us what voters' attitudes are toward Trump and toward this trial is what percent of voters think that Trump should be imprisoned. And so, of course, we've got 73% of Democrats say that Trump should be imprisoned. Not surprising. We have 5% of Republicans. This is really big. And so if we go up and look back at what we were talking about with what percent of Republicans are less likely to support Trump and convictions important into how they will vote, we've got just about 7%. Numbers before, like I mentioned, I think the one they were talking about 2 weeks ago on MSNBC was 10% of Republicans say less likely, right? Here we have 8, pretty close. So 7% say less likely, and this is important to how they will vote. And then down here, 5% say imprisonment. So someone came up to me the other day and asked me, oh, are the Republicans done for? Is Trump done for now that 1 in 10 Republicans say that they're less likely to support Trump? And my answer was, well, no, because about 5 to 10% of Republicans hate Trump already, right? These are the people who are the Mitt Romney, maybe George Bush, suburban Republicans who haven't left the party yet, and maybe they still vote for people like Glenn Youngkin, they vote for other people down ballot, but by and large, they're not going to support Trump, and they really, really don't like him. These are the never Trumpers. And so this is about 5 to 10% of the party. And right here we see we've got 5% of Republicans saying, yeah, imprison him. These are the people who already, most likely, these are the people who already weren't voting for Trump. Now, interestingly, we don't care about the Democrat number very much, but interestingly, 42% of independents say Trump should go to jail. Really interesting. And then if we look up here, it's only 32% saying they're less likely to support him. And so this tells us that there's a non-zero number of independents who would be fine voting for Trump if he was in jail. They say, yeah, he should go to jail, and I might still vote for him. And so this is just fascinating to me. And again, I think this is the trauma response of the American public on this election in particular, that, again, 42% say it's time for prison, but only 32% say that they're less likely to support him in this election. And so what I think this means for me, or to me, is that we are going to see a big drop off in the number of people who are in the less likely camp. Again, this 32% right here, we're going to see a drop off in that. It's safe to say some of these were already Biden voters. Some of these people are, just middle of the road people. Maybe they weren't sure, and now they're less likely to support Trump. But again, I think we're going to see a big drop off from 32% maybe down to like 20% or something like that. And at the end of the day, it's probably not going to make a huge difference in this election. And this is for another video, another day. But right now, Trump's poll numbers are barely taking a dent. And so I think it's safe to say that in this election, this is probably, and even surprisingly, not going to play a big part in shaping people's minds, although I can guarantee you it'll be a big part of the ads that you see and in the debate next week and in all the Democrat talking points. So please like and subscribe for more election analysis. If you have an election question, please click on the link in my bio and I'll try to answer in a future video. We'll see you next time.